Okay, should we get going?
Sure.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody. This is Anto Buriarjo, and welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For information about who we are, the panelists, head over to mondaylive.org, where we are listed there, or our LinkedIn profiles are all listed. A reminder that views expressed here are personal, not any company or organization. And please do post questions and comments on the Q&A and chat. And as a reminder, this slide deck is available on mondaylive.org as well, right there on the homepage. So this being November, we're talking about clarity. We're trying to see if there is some clarity in what we're talking about in terms of the future of smart buildings, especially as we start to come out of the pandemic. So we're going to continue that. Our agenda today, as normal, news and trends, chit chat, and then we'll have a discussion on clarity. We have two great guests today. Somebody who's going to explain to us what SPIRE is all about. This is an initiative from UL and TIA on building assessment, smart building assessment. And then I'm really looking forward to having a conversation and listening to what JLL has to say about what they see in the market. We have the CIO of JLL joining us today, so looking forward to that. But before we get to that, let's just quickly go through some news and other sort of interesting facts. Start with you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Anto. Okay, our November issue is online, creating clarity. We believe that our success depends on creating clarity to the complex. Also, as we started to actually try to bring clarity, we found that clarity is very much framed inside the face of change. And so we wrote another article, which just came online November the 11th. Our December issue will be Vetting Vegas, the AHR Expo. That's, I think everyone's is focused on seeing what's going to happen there. It's our first face-to-face major event of 2022. AHR is always a big industry event, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. We've got 12 education sessions there that we are finally getting all together, and we're looking forward to that. One of those, number 4, is the Coalition for Smart Building with Anto leading us in a mega session, and he's going to chat about Smarter Stack, 2525 specification, and the system of systems. Actually just went up just moments ago is a video of Therese and one of our sessions, which is smart women and smarter buildings. So it's got some great sessions going there. Please join our December issue and promoting anything you're going to be doing in Vegas or any of the events you're involved in. Actually, almost several of the folks at Monday Live are involved. The Haystack, we have a Haystack event. Mark is leading a collaboratory event. So there's lots if you take a look through our education sessions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Move over to Mark. Muted.
In keeping with our theme about clarity for this month, one of the things I've been doing is looking at just other stuff that helps me help define clarity for our industry and our business. And so I came across the 6 IoT adoption trends for 2022. And what was interesting is, according to this particular study that was just out, is, as you can see, it's all set to accelerate smart operations, IoT for asset, plant performance optimizations, and those types of things. And again, I think that, along with one of the top performance in addition to optimization and performance, is automation, access, and the use of real-time data from connected assets. bringing in predictive maintenance type things, et cetera. A core theme to fueling assets, to increase the asset of the value of asset of a building, as well as retrofitting. In my opinion, all of these apply to the built environment. And it's something that I think, even though this says 6 IoT adoption trends for 2022, I think you could change the IoT to 6 adoption trends for 2022 with respect to the built environment. And I think that's pretty clear and whatever. And one last quick thing is, I love this, is that the gap, it's in the chart there, the gap between adoption leaders and laggards is widening. And, the question for a group, maybe not today since we have such a power hack group today, is that something we should discuss in the future? So back to you, Anto.
Good.
Hey, by the
points.
way, Mark, while he's switching over, I want to say, you could take those same trends that you just discussed and put them in process automation, put them in traffic automation. It's the same, everyone's dealing with the same thing. So it's fascinating.
John.
Yeah, 2 articles I thought were interesting. One, going back to a topic we touched on a lot at the beginning of the pandemic, which is hygiene theater. And this article saying that, hygiene theater doesn't work, but effective cleaning is useful. I thought that was interesting to come back around and read an article on that. The other thing is, in the bigger picture, the political picture about the climate crisis. And you read the article, but the overall commentary here is that the current international order isn't prepared, isn't ready, and can't really address it because of the lack of shared costs, shared goals, shared impacts of the climate crisis. So just an interesting high level political perspective.
Great, thank you. And Bill.
One article from Bill, with GE breaking up, announcing the breakup this week. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that spoke to, well, I'll let you read it and come away with yourself. What I took was legions of elite managers. You'll recall the Jack Welch model and all of that. Can't undo things like bad decisions and poor timing. All right. And I don't know, I took away that it's the problems you're solving and the technology you're bringing, the solutions you bring, rather than an elite group of high-end managers. And so maybe I could summarize it by saying, is it the death of management, or maybe the death of management as gods? So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Insightful. Anno.
Yeah, so I think this might be an interesting transition from Bill's slide to, in fact, Anto's slide. I think that comes next, because we've all heard of the great resignation. This is a great article by Future Forum, which is actually referenced in Fortune magazine as well. It's called The Great Executive Employee Disconnect, right? So, how management is actually disconnected from employees. Specifically, they're focused on return to office environment. So some really interesting numbers there. The ones that jumped out at me, the first one, of course, 76. And this was all about knowledge workers, right? So these are all skilled workers, knowledge worker types. So they interviewed some 45,000 people across the world. 76% of knowledge workers want flexibility in where they work, and 93% want flexibility when they work. And then I love this other one about 66% of the executives say they're doing workforce policies without any input from employees. So talking back to Bill's earlier slide about there's a big disconnect between management and employees, and interesting numbers, I think.
Great, thank you. And so, as Anna said, my slide is the main one's about the continuation of the Great Resignation in September 4.4. It's slightly greater than August. I think we've all seen that over the weekend. But what that sort of led me to think about over the weekend is the sort of the interplay between that and automation. We've all been sort of, as a society, sort of anticipating automation, potentially undermining what we do. Maybe it's actually the other way around. Maybe we all resign and we actually need automation to rescue us, and not automation forcing people out of work. So there's some interesting dynamics that we're going to see over the next few months and years.
Hey, Anto, to that, I mean, this is a really interesting conversation. There's never been a time in history when people wouldn't drop their pitchforks and hoes and run to the cities and work in a factory. And now we're seeing that people want to drop their wrenches from the factories and go do something else. I mean, life on the farm is difficult. The city life saved people from that. Life in factories is difficult. Automation is going to save people from that.
Yeah. Great.
And I've built, just to that point, I have a whole thesis that I pounded onto these guys in the Wednesday call about how automation is, in fact, in my mind, intelligent automation is potentially the savior of the factories in the US in the response to the Chinese takeover.
Beautiful. Love that. Love that.
Okay. So moving on, we're talking about clarity, and I'm going to bring on our two guests. The first I'm going to bring on is Elyse Hobson from UL, and Eddy Wagoner. I think you go by Eddy, as I understand it. So why am I not, can't do that? There you go.
That's correct, Anto.
Hey, good. Hey, Eddy.
Hello.
Hello, Elyse. Why don't we start with you, because I have your slide right up on here, and then you only have one slide, so we can do that, and then we can move on to discussion. So please introduce yourself, and then introduce Spire, and give us a bit of a perspective, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Sounds great. All right, so a little bit about myself. My name is Elyse Hobson. I've been essentially in the built environment my entire career. I spent many years in the building automation industry, and now more recently I've started to work with UL. A lot of things that you've alluded to, right, in terms of clarity. I think we all know that what the definition is of a smart building is not unique. It's not unique, right? There is no universal standard. There is no one definition. And so that's where Spire has a very nice strategic play, in that it provides a way to assess a smart building. Now, there are many other ways that there are many solutions that exist that might analyze a smart building, like in terms of connectivity, but we at UL realize that a smart building is actually much more than that. Currently, we have a set of 6 different criteria: power and energy, health and well-being, life and property safety, connectivity, cybersecurity, and sustainability. And to us, these are the 6 sort of pillars, or at least the original pillars, of what actually makes a building smart today. In the future, we're expanding onto other criteria like data and governance, and then also a tenant experience. And what I really like about the Spire program is that it's backed by UL and TIA. So we created a working group of 60 plus members of industry to help define exactly what a smart building is and what it needs to be. And so with these working groups, we created a list currently of, I think, 170 questions that a building owner, manager, or a portfolio owner can then run through their building. Excuse me. A little tickle in my throat. So what the assessment allows a person to do is actually perform 2 different types of assessments: a self-assessment and a verified assessment. A self-assessment allows them to get an individual understanding of the current status of their building. So if I'm a building owner and I want to say, let me evaluate sort of my power and energy. This self-assessment it'll give you a sort of a personalized score, so that you know where maybe that you want to focus on. And then the verified assessment, what we do is we actually bring in a list of assessors, or a variety of assessors that are backed by UL, to go work with a building owner or a manager to decide, to help. It allows them to work through that assessment. They provide actual evidence, and then create a branded, they create a unique certification. It creates a unique score, that's the word, for that particular building. So a verified assessment really actually is sort of the the meat and potatoes of what Spire is. They consist of a variety of different levels. Currently, I believe we have 1 through 5, and this gives a rating of exactly sort of what your building is and how smart it is today. Are there any, sorry, I realized I went through that pretty fast. Are there any questions?
So Elyse,
Go ahead, Mark.
Elyse, Mark Peacock, thank you for joining us. Great.
I'm going to drop the slide, I think.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So my
it's hard to
question
condense
is,
it all into like one single slide when you have
That
this
was good.
giant
Thank you for doing
program.
Nice
that.
right?
job, nice job.
it was good. It was good. So I guess my question is, if I'm a building owner, operator, or a facilities,
Yep.
In facilities management or whatever, with this, do you have a simplified checklist that I can go around and check? Did this?
Yep.
Check. We meet this? Nope. Got to do something about this or whatever.
Yeah, so that's the intention of the self-assessment. The self-assessment is a sort of a checklist and a questionnaire. So that self-assessment actually guides a person through those different sets of criteria. It asks very pointed questions, right? Like, do you have XYZ building certificates? It allows them to do that themselves. So then they get an idea of potentially what their score is before they go in and do that verified assessment. And that's the great part about having a self-assessment is that they can kind of get that initial understanding before they go in for the big test, right?
And then a follow-up, is there a cost involved?
Yeah, they're currently for some of the initial stages, we are offering free verified assessments for a small number of companies. So if you're really interested, of course, come talk to me. My email is elyse.hobson@ul.com. Would love to assess your buildings. The nice part is about a verified assessment too, is that by bringing in those auditors, they actually will work with either your building manager or the portfolio owner, whomever is in charge of the building, to actually run through that checklist. I think that that's really great because if they don't understand perhaps a very particular question, right? Cybersecurity, we know, is really complicated and actually expands more than just within the building space, right? It deals with people, their identities, and whatnot. So they actually will walk through with a person and help gather that evidence and actually then score the building. And of course, buildings change and scores change. And so, of course, you have the ability to re-verify. Once our criteria changes every single, hopefully not every single day, but pretty often with the power of the working groups. And so it's a great program in my opinion, because it helps create that one definition of what smart truly means.
Oh, thank you.
Elyse, can you give us just a snapshot of where this program is, because it's relatively new? Can you tell us where it is and what you're expecting in the next year or two, and then we can bring Eddie into the conversation.
Yeah, so I would say it is fairly new. We're probably, I would say, nearly at the beginning stages of really getting buildings in, getting assessed. We have the backings of our working groups. We do have a few customers that have come in already. But of course, we're always looking for more. So I would say it's still in the early stages. So TIA, we have the ability to join working groups. So if that's something that you're interested in, where you would like to be a participant in helping to define that criteria that we ask, that is an opportunity as well to really help shape out exactly what those definitions are. And in the future, some of the things that we're doing, of course, when it comes to these working groups, is creating working groups kind of around each of the different criteria. So data and information governance is one of the bigger ones that is going to be coming out. And then also tenant experience, which sounds like a really weird thing to really assess, but actually, it's really important. How people use those buildings is key. And so we believe that there is a way to ask the right kinds of questions to really provide value to tenants, and also to kind of assess the building itself and whether or not tenants are getting the experience that they want out of their buildings. Future other roadmaps are, of course, more criteria. And then we're working on something called like a marketplace as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Elyse. Eddie,
I have a quick question before I move on. Elyse, is there a cost to this, and how long is a typical assessment?
I just was on a review with an assessment this like 20 minutes ago. it actually takes, only a few hours. I think they finish nearly start in the morning, finish by lunchtime. Some criteria takes a little bit longer, but it's certainly less than a day's worth of a building manager's time. And again, the self-assessments are pretty self-guided, so you can do it on your own, take however long it is you're going to take. And there, like I said, there is a cost to the verified assessment, but of course that we can kind of work with companies for pricing and things like that. So,
but just be clear, the self-assessment is no charge?
No, currently the self-assessment is free.
Is free, okay.
Yes. Yes, and the self-assessment, right, it gives that snapshot. And I like that part too. Like if you're a building integrator, right, you can have a customer say, hey, why don't you go do a self-assessment, kind of get an understanding maybe of where the building is, and then how you can then take that score and help grow through a verified assessment.
Thank you, Elyse. Eddy, let's bring you into this conversation. I think all of us here would very much love to hear what's on your mind as a CIO at JLL, and if you can sort of explain your role and what you're seeing right now in terms of the space and coming out of COVID and figuring out the future and all that kind of stuff. Welcome, and all yours.
Thank you for having me. The first thing on my mind is, Scott Hoffman, what have you done to me? Because you didn't tell me you were bringing me to like a meeting of the dons of the big family. So I get invited to a lot of media and client events, and this is a very intimidating group only because you guys know what you're talking about. You're at the forefront of a lot of things. So very honored to be here. And it is a little bit intimidating because you guys are so much that you do that's so important to the future of real estate. A little bit about me, 35 years in the industry. I didn't choose real estate, it chose me. There's a great story there sometime. I didn't choose IT. I got forced into it by a hard drinking, hard cursing, chain smoking partner that told me in 1986 to get in and fix his computer. He just needed to turn his monitor on. Somehow I've parlayed that into becoming a CIO, 25 years at JLL with 15 as CIO. Majority of my career, I have spent trying to get real estate people to understand there's a thing called a computer that could really help them in real estate operations. JLL would have these 8-hour meetings with prospective clients, and at the last 5 minutes of the meeting, they would give me time. Right before COVID, I'm being a little dramatic, but not much. Right before COVID hit, we started seeing changes in the trends, and real estate people were starting to recognize that if they didn't better use data and technology, their companies were going to lose competitive advantage. I will tell you that the pandemic, being as horrible as it has been for us as people and as a planet, it has accelerated every trend in real estate to the point now where it's not, are you going to do some of these things? It's when will you be doing them across the board? And so for the last 2 years, with the creation of JLLT, by the way, we restructured my job to spend more time playing to my strengths, which is talking to clients, talking to groups like this, being out in the marketplace. As a matter of fact, my first event was a keynote with Gartner that happened the week the world shut down. So for the past coming soon 2 years, it's talking about these things, talking with people. So that's a bit of the background. My marketing and PR people say that I make very provocative statements. I put them on edge. So I will do some of that because I don't think you want to just hear what everybody else tells you. I would love for you to challenge me back, give your perspective. And this shouldn't just be the beginning of this shouldn't just be the conversation. This should be the beginning. So as we go forward, I would love to keep some dialogues going. So with that in mind, provocative statement. Buildings aren't important. It's the people that are important. And as we talk about and think about the technology, we've got to understand what the people are looking for. And I actually just this morning was on a call with our global head of research, and they're getting ready to release some brand new research. So I'm going to preview it here for you guys. And Scott, do not go tell anybody I shared this before they released it. And I was actually a little surprised. she's saying that, and you guys know this, people have had a good experience for the most part working from home, better than the experience many people had in the office. And her research is telling her that until we in real estate figure out why people have a better experience at home and figure out how to make it as comfortable as home at the office, we're not going to draw everybody back, or we're not going to give them the experience that they're looking for. And as I looked at her research, the thing that popped out of me, by the way, was quality of sleep. Now, maybe I would, if they put mats down in a JLL office, I would take an afternoon nap because there are days when I need that. But she's got like the meals you had, the time you spent with family, the ability to take breaks. It's all of these aspects that all of us have had great experiences with at work. And while the headlines are being made by the CEOs and executives saying, I want everybody back, I want everybody remote, so what do the people think? And so a lot of our research is starting to look at how are people thinking. The CIO of Bosch made a very interesting comment in a public webinar that I was moderating. He said, we're surveying our employees to find out what they want in the office. And another panelist said, doesn't Bosch have like 300,000 employees? And he said, we have 400,000. You're surveying 400,000 people. Now, we can't keep 400,000 people happy. But in asking people what they're looking for, we're starting to draw out some information to think differently. There was a webinar last week with Forbes CIO, and we had the research scientist from MIT who runs their Center for Real Estate Innovation, Dr. Andrea Chagoo was on with me. And she made the comment that we've not spent a lot of time with data science of the human experience, and that none of us will be successful until we figure that out and apply that into it. And I'm going to get back to smart buildings because there's a big play, but this, I think we have to start thinking broader than we have thought, because if you think about my experience in the workplace, it's much broader than how real estate people have traditionally thought. And I'm going to give you a real life example from JLL. When I go into a JLL office, I need to find a desk. Even though I'm a CIO, I don't have an assigned desk anymore. So I've got to reserve a desk. I may see something that needs a facility request. I'm hot, I'm cold, the desk needs cleaning. By the way, reserving the desk is one technology, reporting on issues another technology. I still will print certain reports because I can't break out of the highlighter and doing my handwritten notes. No, that's not sustainable, but I still need to print. It never fails when I go to print, printers out of paper. We actually use a managed print service, so that's another group. Sometimes I need IT support, and my IT help desk makes me call the help desk. I can't, I don't get special treatment. That's yet another URL. I could go through and need a sandwich. We use the caterer for that. If you think about it from the user's perspective, I don't want to navigate all that bureaucracy. I just want to get what I need to be more productive. And as we come back to the workplace, our people are wanting more engagement. If they're going to have flexibility and choice, then they need to have the technology that both enables them when they come into the office, but also when I walk in and find out JLL's head of facilities has changed things from lessons learned from the pandemic, I don't want to spend the first 10, 15 minutes trying to figure it out when I've got a call just like this. I want to be able to get in. I want to be able to do it. And so we're starting to think about with all of these different technologies and capabilities that we can all bring, how do we integrate them together for a better experience for the people? And if you'll notice, I talked about things like print services. Let's throw HR into it. Let's throw IT into it. Those aren't real estate functions, but to the end user, to the occupant, it's what I need from the corporation to do my job. The occupant doesn't care that the CIO does this and the CHRO does this and real estate's doing this. I just need what I need from the company. Make it easy to do my job. So we're starting to think about how in that return, and I'm not advocating I take over the benefit system at all. Mary does a great job with that. But how does Mary, our global head of real estate, me as CIO, the head of real estate, Marcellus, how do we work together to create that workplace? Because the successful workplaces of the future can't just be real estate. We've got to figure out, how do we involve HR to create the place people want to be? I heard someone mention the talent war. I was on a call with some CIOs and real estate people the other day, 2 different calls. And I made the comment that it doesn't matter whether you have everybody back in the office or everybody remote or hybrid. From a competitive standpoint, it doesn't matter, because someone is going to have a hybrid or a remote option. And now, instead of me, if I were to leave JLL, do I have to move to LA to work for one competitor, or do I need to move somewhere else to work for another one? Now I can stay where I am and work for anybody, anywhere. And so that changes the game for a lot of companies. I was talking to a major company outside of Chicago that in their 100-year history, you had to move to their tertiary city to work in their headquarters. And if I named them, every one of you would know who they are. And their CTO said, we're having to completely rethink that. Our leadership, for the first time in history, is saying we've got to figure remote out because they're losing talent. They're starting to lose that war. So I think that's going to be a very important part. Let me go to one other thing. I talked about thinking differently, and this is from that same research. JLL starting to talk about, or we will be talking about, a multidimensional well-being ecosystem. That's actually the big title, but there's 3 facets to it. It's about physical well-being. So if you think about healthy return, assessments, Elyse, you just talked about, doing assessments. How do we do that? The office furniture. How do we think about ergonomics? How do we think about, the spaces? That's part of that physical piece that we've always talked about. But you're hearing this a lot. We're starting to think about, what about mental well-being? There's well-being training. There's space that we may need for that. There's wellness wearables. If you think about the wearables and the cognitive analysis that could come out of that could inform experience and the way that we design spaces, huge opportunities there. Finally, there's social well-being. We're starting to look at that with JLL's experience services, both from a technology perspective, as well as the way that we have experience ambassadors in place as healthy eating programs. So the graphic for that they've created is actually a circle with all of these interlocking, because you can't be successful if you don't have all 3, and you can't be successful if they don't work together. And if you think about it, I need all 3 of those, whether I'm working from home, working from the office, or working from anywhere. And that's probably the next step. I'll give a couple more comments, then I'll stop talking, because I can fill an hour with 3 hours of conversation. We've started thinking differently within JLL, because there was a day if someone came and said, how can you help us with technology? I would have been JLL technology all the time. If you think about, especially with smart building technology, that technology stays with the building in some cases as managers come in and go, tenants come in and go. And so how do we all work together for that integration aspect, so that as tenants may move in and out or ownership changes, the occupants, again, people are important. An owner can change and the occupants are still in the building. How do we do what we do to help those occupants, regardless of how ownership or management may change over time? How do we work together with the data? And I think a lot of us historically, I know we've been this way historically, it's our data, it's our intellectual capital, but there's a lot of data that we could share, and in sharing, produce something better for our occupants and for our industry as we add in sustainability for our world. Let me hit on sustainability. I think there's huge opportunities with smart building and some of the integrations. I know COP26 just happened and has been in the news. We're making a statement, and the research from MIT is backing us up. And someone in an earlier webinar told me they'd heard the same thing from Harvard. So a lot of smart people are saying this. If your building is not sustainable in the not too distant future, in the short term, you're not going to be able to get financing for it. And someone told me the other day they thought I was crazy. And I said, you go get a building that has asbestos that hasn't been abated and go try to get financing on that. People don't want that risk. So history shows us that when people start thinking there's a risk to it, it's going to have an impact on your financing. Even if you could get financing, the younger generation doesn't want to be with or associated with things that are unhealthy, bad for the planet, that they think is having a negative impact. And so we're going to deal with that from a demand perspective. And then the last thing that I would throw out to you guys about ways we are thinking differently. You're probably familiar that JLL created an investment fund. We're tracking 8,000 prop tech companies, probably more that's been added just since we've been talking. That's an explosion. I don't think since the internet bubble, which I had to go back and look up the date on that. That was in the last century, if you remember. But I remember all of the attention around that and how it was going to change our world before the bubble popped. And if you think back to it, there were some technologies that emerged that did impact and change us. I think the differences in the lessons learned is how do we track these technologies? How do we make the right investments? How do we integrate? But more importantly, as you guys know, technology is ever evolving and changing. So how do we help our clients understand that just because you have something that works now, you may need to add something additional, or you may need to upgrade or switch out, next year? How do we help the people through the change? How do we get people to change their processes? Because it's a lot cheaper to change a process than it is to customize a technology to fit a 1980s process. And then finally, we're starting to think about, from an affiliate perspective, are there opportunities for us and you to do some things together? My call right before this was with a global CEO for a major company. And he said, I need some way where I can call and say, I need space and I need turnkey. And he's not talking about WeWorks. He needs his own space for the type of work that they're in. But how can I come in and basically all of us have created something that enables them to do business faster? And that includes his energy. It includes his network connections. It includes experience. It's reducing that cycle time that we have in real estate. So those are some, until you ask me what was top of mind, that's like maybe the very top. But like I said, you guys can take me in any direction and throw anything at me, and I'll say, I don't know if I don't know, but I bet you I can find somebody at JLL that can help answer. And thanks for the opportunity.
That's wonderful. I'm sure there's a question or two here.
Yeah, I got a question, Freddie. Talk about a wide range of things that, occupants, employees, people returning to these buildings want, and we deal with a lot of fuzzy stuff on our side of trying to make the buildings run right, but that seems even fuzzier, right? And I wanted to try to connect the two topics here. If somebody's going to implement those things, is there, do you see benefit in the types of things Spire is doing, that there's some independent outside a certification, for lack of a better word, that it's achieving some of these goals in a defined way?
I do. I think somebody asked me today what I thought of the word digital. And I said, well, first tell me your definition of it, and I'll tell you what I think, because we all have different definitions. If I think about, for example, LEED certification, when that came around, because people, when we talk terms, people want to understand, when you say that, are we talking about the same thing? So I do think that there is an opportunity there for that. And I do think that will help people understand what we need to do, because I think a lot of folks with all this, like I said earlier, strong, thought-provoking, provocative statement, but I would tell every real estate person, I don't care who you are, you're not thinking broadly enough. And I say that because every day I see something in the media or hear something from a client where I go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And especially with the way pandemic surge is projected to happen. And we're seeing that now in certain European countries. Here in the Midwest, in Chicago, we thought we had it tamped down and it's popping back up. We're going to be dealing with different situations, constantly. Plus we've got sustainability from COVID. There's so much going on that, yes, I think having some type of definition, but then also forums to be able to share those thoughts as we go, because I think we're going to, as an industry, need to get faster. It takes us years to build buildings and they last for generations. And in some ways, I think our industry is, we're okay with things taking a long time because you can't build a building overnight. Yeah, I think people are expecting us to be able to do some things faster, and that's going to be some challenges.
So Eddie, this is Mark. I've got a question for you. So,
hey, Mark.
Hey, So what you just discussed, obviously, I think we all agree on this call, there's a convergence of the operational side of a building and the workplace side of the building, just like there has been a convergence of OT and IT. All right, so I think we all concur that. My question is this: whose responsibility is truly the workplace environment? Is it the building owner operator, or is it, in this case, the tenant? In other words, okay, I got a business, I employ 500 people. Is it me, the business owner, or is it the building owner and the occupier? I'd like your thoughts on that, please.
The answer is yes. It's both, and I'll explain that. And that's a great question, by the way, because I think quite often, and I've seen this within JLL, that's the management, the building owner's responsibility. That's the tenant responsibility. And that works great when you're calculating escalations. When you've got an occupant walking into the lobby, they don't care. And so I think if I use an example of a big, let's say, massive bank moves into, a high-rise building in Chicago, I think they have to work together. If you think about sustainability, the bank will want a healthy environment for their people, and they have some responsibilities in their space where they have control to do things like there's new technology with it's a technology called Safe for Me that allows proximity tracking, so that if we have a COVID incident, they can say, Eddie, you've been within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes. They won't tell me who, but they can give you some definitive fast action. Or for doing flexibility and experience, the tenant has a responsibility, or we as the real estate companies that help them with that, to create those spaces and use that data to understand how the people are using the space. But I also think the owners have a responsibility too. I was on a call with InfoGrid earlier, and we were actually doing a podcast, and we were talking about the opportunities with IoT around sustainability and building management. And we talked about air quality. You guys have talked about air quality and are experts on it and have been for years. Now everybody walking into the lobby of the building is saying, what's the air quality rating in this building? And half of them don't even know what would be a good rating or a bad rating. It's just the media has promoted it. And so now they're wanting it, and we'll have some people that will start learning about it and focusing on it. Coincidentally, I had someone say the other day that same technology can be used to help people with allergies. I'd never thought about that. I've got bad allergies. Now I'm going to start asking you guys, hey, so Mark, bit of a long answer, but I think it's both. And I think that's why it's so important that we start working together, and why, again, from a financial perspective, we got to figure out who's supposed to pay for what. But from a people perspective, we've got to figure out how we collaborate together to do the right thing for the people.
So I want to ask Elyse, you've heard a lot of stuff here, a lot of wonderful, great stuff from Eddie. Could you react to this? I mean,
yeah, I'm sure you can see my face reacting, but
yes.
No, I entirely agree with what Ed said. In fact, actually, we just finished an assessment with the building manager. We asked questions around things like cybersecurity, all of this IT, OT types of integration, and some of their responses were, I didn't realize how interconnected these things were. I didn't realize, why I was being asked these things, but then they were presented to me in a way that I could understand. And so now I see value into why we were doing those things. And I think an agnostic assessment, right, which of course is what Spire has, that pulls in a variety of different types of organizations to define that, really helps shape that fuzziness that you had talked about, John. So, we have the operational side, we have the people side, having something in the middle that kind of explains the two different ends and why it's important, and then even provides, some tangible next steps. This is exactly what we need to be starting to do. So, and, the experience is basically everyone. You own the building, you occupy it, everybody does actually care, about the quality of their building. Just how they use it might be a little different.
Let me throw one other thing at you guys to think about, because I think this is a challenge that we have in the industry that I don't think people always realize. And I'm going to give the owner perspective, and then I'm going to give a tenant perspective. So if I'm the owner of a building, I typically don't own just one building, especially if I'm a pension fund. I have multiple buildings and they're in these big funds. And owners live and die by data. They're making decisions about returns, and the faster we can give them data and the higher the quality, the better off we all are. As they start looking at some of these concepts and embracing them more, and we were at University of Wisconsin's biennial real estate conference, and we made the statement that if the owners didn't start using data and some of the technology concepts, they were going to lose value. Their buildings would not be as valuable as people are looking for better experience, more sustainable buildings, et cetera. But if you think about it, a pension fund that may own 10, 20, 100 buildings, if we were to go in and audit the smart building implementations in every one of them would be different.
Yep.
And you've got people like JLL and its competitors that we're all doing things from a different way. And I'm not advocating that JLL take over everything, or, we use one technology everywhere, but we've got to do a better job around standards and integration of data, because at that pension fund ownership level, if we can make it easier for them to get their data in a more standardized format to make better, faster decisions, that's going to increase the value of the building. That's going to help them. If I switch to a tenant perspective, take any company name in the Fortune 200, they have locations everywhere in those buildings. And same thing, when we go and audit, I can put a JLL work order system in that's consistent for them across all locations. But we're interfacing with different smart building systems behind the scenes everywhere. And so the work that we end up doing for some of the integrations, or you go into some buildings where it's really easy, it's a great integration, and you go into others where it's like stepping back into the 60s. So how do we, that big major global tenant company, they're starting now to demand more information, more decision makers. We've named a bunch of C-suite level people. They're starting to get into the shorts of the real estate team in ways they never have, as their people are demanding more. And as they realize it really does have an impact on their war for talent, it has an impact on competitiveness, it has an impact on productivity. Elyse mentioned cybersecurity for I did. So Scott, you'll have to go back internally and ding me for that I didn't mention cybersecurity. But if you think about every single thing that we've talked about, there is an aspect there to protecting that data of our people, protecting the buildings, because everything we put in introduces new risk. And so anywhere where we can do consistency or just even sharing among ourselves, we can make sure that we've got a better implementation for those aspects. So just wanted to add that on as some additional, thoughts. The buildings have choice. They always will have choice. They need to have that choice. The tenants need that. But how do we in the background integrate some of those choices better so that we can make better, faster decisions and operate better?
Yeah, and that's why I like something like Spire or other tools that that exist, is that even at a portfolio level, right, you can analyze each one of your buildings, but then you can get a comprehensive report essentially to allow portfolio owners to create much more strategic investment. So, if there are particular areas and criteria that, 50% of your buildings are actually, critically low in cybersecurity, you might want to then make that investment to ensure the security of your occupants, right? And so it's very difficult to comb that landscape, as you were kind of alluding to, is that there's so many different systems and options that exist out there. So we definitely need to do our best to try and help people focus on what's the most important for their building.
Just to sort of build on that, Elyse, and that's something that we've talked about a lot in this sessions, is, and to your point, Eddie, earlier too, there's just so much new technology coming in prop tech, the thousands that you guys are tracking and what's going on. There's technology coming in from all over the world, that's into the space. One of the things that we see, and the work that you guys are doing, Elyse, is great, but one of the bigger challenges that we see with the building owners is, back to your point, the awareness of what's possible, right? There seems to be a vacuum formed as to the independent consultants to say, what do I need to do? You know,
Right.
I mean, I'm happily go tell a building owner, say, all my use cases are great, do mine, you know.
Right.
And one of the challenges we see in this space is, you know, where are they going to for that advice, you know, for the
Right.
independent advice, and tools like, you know, standards like SWAR is great, it'll help them, but and to your point earlier too about the use cases, you know, when you start to talk about them, what are the possible use cases? Their eyes light up and they go, "Oh, this is great. Why
Yes.
didn't anyone tell me about this before?" And we're
Right.
struggling with that piece, right? How's that gap? Where does the owners go to get that advice?
Yeah, so with one of the things with some of the criteria with Inspire, actually, you know, you have a score, let's say like in one particular area, but you know, we do provide suggestions on how to get to the next level. But not with that, you know, if I'm a building owner and I've done a self-assessment, let's say, and I've scored a 2, and I say, this is based off the report, the areas that I need to improve, you know, you could use that to build your own roadmap for investment. Or if you're an integrator, you can take that information and they can map your own use cases exactly to the suggestions within that criteria to help at least further that message of, you know, these are the types of areas we want to improve. This is how we do it. And then you can go actually then through a new verified assessment or a verified assessment, right? And that kind of helps check off those check boxes of that integration and that story. But as we add more criteria and expand on it, right, like in how we frame the questions, we're really trying to showcase the value, provide explanations around, you know, these types of things. It's exciting stuff.
Maybe an angle of taking this conversation is that if I'm a big corporation and I'm trying to figure out how to improve my supply chain or productivity of manufacturing, I probably will go to one of the big consulting groups and say, you know, and give them $5 million and they'll spend 6 months and tell you what to do, and then you believe it, right, and you go and do it. I think it's more that kind of thing that Anna was sort of asking. Who is the authority that will actually be able to talk to the C-level suite of these enterprises that actually own properties? Is that, are you, Eddie, are you seeing those kinds of conversations starting to happen, or is that, are we not looking at that the right way?
No, we are. I would actually say it's why we created JLLT the way we did. So just a little bit of background. We took the technology group at JLL and we consolidated everything. Then we made some acquisitions for technologies we knew we needed that we didn't have. We brought in Silicon Valley talent to help us build things and do things we couldn't do on our own. By the way, Silicon Valley talent will tell you all the things you've done wrong for the last 20 years. And once you get over, you're really seriously, it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. That is a different way of thinking. Can't tell you, I would just be honest. I was really threatened the first little bit. Now I'm more energized than ever. The other thing we did is we actually made acquisitions of some advisory companies that did that, as well as some companies that could help with like IWNS implementations, because like I said earlier, clients have choice. And that choice can be across the range, and they just need help, whether it's our technology or somebody else's. And so we're seeing that where we've got that advisory, where we can go in and say, look, we've got this Silicon Valley talent, we've got these acquisitions that go across a broad range of technologies. We are partnering with several dozen technology companies, coupled with I've got 90,000 real estate experts that, believe me, if it doesn't work, they're going to be the first to tell me, yelling and screaming. There's a bit of that credibility to be able to go in and say, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're currently using, and here's how it works, and here's the real life proof statements. And I think that's anything that's going to be done in that way. You've got to be able to go in. Anybody can sell something, but it's telling people, look, I'm painting a vision. Here's what's available right now, but you got to have your roadmap to where you want to, get to, and you got to understand the future so that you can act competitively. And then here's the real life experience, because let's face it, implementing technology is just one part of it. It's that change management around process. It's the people change. And I think quite often, people miss that work, or the C-suite sometimes think, if you've ever presented to a C-suite and you tell them I can do this and they say do it, they expect you to do it. but quite often people will go in and overpromise and then underdeliver. I think it's really important to have those real life experiences, the good and the bad, so that they can make better decisions. So, bit of a long answer, Anto, but yeah, seeing huge opportunities in that area. And one more statement. A big part of my career, when I've gone and talked to clients or prospective clients, it's always tell me what the Bank of America's, the Procter and Gamble's, the HSBC's, it's the who's who. Listen, tell me what they're doing. And we'll share where we can. And they'll go, that's great. Of course they would be out, looking at my camera. They're out here. I'm right here. I just need to get right here. I don't want to be like that. Now, when they're having their conversations and they're saying, well, tell me what all the big forward thinking people are doing. I'm like, same thing you are, trying to figure out what their answer is to, we're all in the same place. And if they're ahead, they're only ahead by a little bit. And that's causing a lot of nervousness because they don't have that benchmark. And I think, Mark mentioned earlier, the adoption gap is widening. I would also say the opportunity gap is widening. I mentioned those 8,000 companies. We're talking smart buildings. I mentioned sustainability, flexibility, experience, the talent war for people in real estate. There's more and more coming at us faster, and inaction is not something that we can do without putting our people and our companies at risk.
If I could, I'd like to weigh in because I know we're running close on time. I'm Steve Fay. Eddie, I appreciate one of the comments you made, which really resonated with me, was the importance of data and decision making. And did Anto make you aware of the Smarter Stack work that we've been doing? Have you looked at that at all?
I was going to go there, but
yeah,
go ahead.
So we've modeled basically the technology stack from the physical all the way up to the operations and purpose for why people have smart buildings. And we're now in the process, and we hope to unveil this by ASHRAE, a specification that really addresses this whole issue of interoperability. So we share how important that is. My request is that you and possibly Elyse as well join our effort to help specify what interoperability needs to look like as we write the spec. Because, like you said, if we're realistic, it has to cross all the different competitors, all the different owners, operators, and we have an opportunity now where, as a group here, we're committed to writing this specification. But for sure, I know we would benefit if you or members of your team would participate in this effort over the next few weeks, because we've only got basically, 6-8 weeks before we have to show this. Is that a possibility?
Let's you connect with Scott because he knows how to get my attention and get me to focus. Right. And let's have that discussion, because I do think, your comment about getting the service providers to adopt it, getting the technology groups to understand it. Yeah, it's my entire career. We've been waiting on standards, if you will, in real estate, and everybody always comes up with why this doesn't work for me. We've got to get past that. And so, would love to look at it and share thoughts.
Okay.
And I would say the same would go to you, Elyse, and Spire, and what you're doing, because that has a role. We've often talked about the need of assessment and ratings, and so that kind of conversations would be very helpful as well.
Yeah, happily ready to have those conversations. The more definition we can create, the better. So for everyone.
So maybe just time for brief closing comments from Eddie, and then from Elyse, and then we can wrap.
Like I said, when I started, this should just be the start of the conversation, unless you thought I was a complete idiot, in which case, but I didn't get the laughter I expected. Okay, Scott, you're going to have to talk me off that ledge. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. If you are on LinkedIn, engage. If you disagree with something I say it right there. If you agree and have something to add, even if it's your company's product, put it in there. The numbers of people that are silently lurking and reading and will comment to me at events or email me off to the side is literally staggering. I never in my wildest dreams. There are people watching and wanting to hear from all of us. And so I would say, please engage. And I would say also how we can all work together better, is only going to help what really matters, which is the people. And if we can deliver a better experience a healthier environment, we're all going to be better. Our families will be better. Companies that we support will compete better. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present to this group, and I look forward to ongoing dialogue.
Thank you, Eddie. Elyse?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, you kind of stole the thunder a little bit there on, thanks and regards. But again, I echo that I think that we are at the exact right time. As people think about going back to work, they want different things out of their building. And how do we get there? How do we assess that to make sure that we're providing enough value to tenants and to also create a better, more sustainable environment? We've seen, right, that these sort of things really do help the health and wellness of everyone. And if we don't make these changes, it's going to be detrimental to the industry potentially. I'd like to say thanks for the opportunity to come and speak. It was really nice to meet everyone. Look forward to potentially more discussions in the future, and ready to get working. If you have a building you want to assess, let me know.
We know where to go.
Exactly.
So this has been an absolutely awesome conversation. Thank you, Elyse and Eddie, and thanks for everybody else on the show and attendees. And we'll get the video of this up on YouTube by tomorrow morning. And with that, have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you
all.
very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Great.
Bye now.